We're good. All right. So you all have to listen to me talk again, so bear with me. But we wanted to talk about something that we used to say was a new concept, but it's not that new anymore. But it's the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation and our work around what we are calling skill savings accounts. But before I dive into that, since the Chamber of Commerce Foundation and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce might be new to some of you, I wanted to provide a little context as to what the Chamber of Commerce, U.S. Chamber of Commerce and Chamber of Commerce Foundation are. Some people may think that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is a federal organization. That is not the case. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is the world's largest business federation, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, where I work, is its nonprofit affiliate, where we are really driven by social impact, and we're philanthropically funded. So I work on the workforce team, and our workforce work at the Chamber of Commerce Foundation is really built around this theory of change, where employer-led partnerships in conjunction with modern education and workforce data and innovative ways of public-private financing of the acquisition of skills can work together. And we seek to do this through a handful of different initiatives. So one being our talent pipeline management, where we work with employers to help them take the supply chain approach to their talent supply chain. The T3 Innovation Network, which is the project that I oversee, which is really focused on data interoperability, data mobility, and ensuring that all learning counts. We also have our JetX program, which is our Jobs and Employment Data Exchange, which is working with states, with employers in various states and creating a standard for reporting employment data. I also oversee our Job Site Initiative, which stands for Job Skills for In-Demand Employment, which is really centered around helping employers create skills-based profiles for their in-demand jobs, where they can identify their skills they're looking for and signal those to their provider partners. We also have our ePIC, which is Employer-Provided Innovation Challenges, and this is really about work-based learning opportunities and creating innovative ways for employers to create work-based learning opportunities for high school and community college students. And then last but not least is talent finance. And talent finance is where the skill savings account concept was born out of. It's identifying different ways of financing talent. And we do all this work because we really recognize that there is a workforce challenge of our time right now. We live in a dynamic economy, and we live in a modern age of technology where the pace and scale of change and upskilling needs and reskilling needs of employers is really going to have this opportunity is really important for economic growth and mobility for individuals. The only downside to this amazing growth and constant change is that the current solutions in the United States do not have the ability to scale to meet the demand. And so this is where we came up with the solution for skill savings accounts. In the United States, employers have the ability to, along with employees as individuals, we can contribute funds as a tax benefit for future healthcare needs. That's called our HSA or FSA, so our healthcare savings account or a flexible spending account. And this is a benefit that employers can offer to their employees, where they can contribute some money monthly to their employees' healthcare or flexible spending accounts, and those monies can be used to pay for emergencies or non-emergency but healthcare needs. What we want to do is take that approach and create an employer benefit where employers and employees can contribute to a skill savings account, where this would be a worker-centric benefit that would that could work with federal and state tax policy as well as direct investment by the individual. And what we want to do is take all these financial tech or fintech programs to manage these funds, and we want to use them to store this data about and manage and share skills. So as individuals take advantage of these skill savings accounts, as my employer, say the Chamber of Commerce Foundation, puts $200 a month into my skill savings account, at the end of the year I'll have $2,000 that I can spend for upskilling opportunities, whether I want to take online AI courses or I want to enroll in a welding class in my community college. I can use these opportunities or these funds to explore different skilling and reskilling and upskilling opportunities. But what we want to do is we recognize that this is not a unique concept, that skill savings accounts or lifelong learning accounts is not a new concept. But what we want to do is all the great work that people are doing in this room today and across the globe around skills and skills data this is where we're kind of combining what we did in talent finance and come up with the concept of skill savings accounts as an employer benefit, We want to combine that with the work at the T3 Innovation Network and what we've been doing there around the digital transformation of the talent marketplace and how we can do that by promoting data interoperability. We want to make sure that employers, education training providers, credentialing providers, government agencies, technology partners, they're all involved in this skills data ecosystem. At the T3 Innovation Network, we have 3 projects that are really focused on this skills acquisition and skills recognition. The first is we were really at the forefront of learning and employment records in the United States. We were part of the White House Council where the term was coined about 6 years ago. So the T3 Innovation Network has been really at the forefront around, they were initially called individual learning accounts and education learning accounts, and now we have learning and employment records. But the learning and employment records are digital records, which many of you are doing here today, that are, some people call them digital badges, digital credentials. But what we really think makes LERs or these digital credentials valuable is these skills data that can be moved and read across different machines and stakeholder groups is what's the value add to this community. We don't want a digital badge to be another PDF or image profile that you throw at an HRIS system. We want that badge to have skills-rich information behind it. So when you're throwing it at an HRIS system, it knows what to do with it. It has information and data and relevant information to pull from it and map people to opportunities and map people to jobs. We also recognize that waiting for everybody in the workforce to have a meaningful suite of learning and employment records is going to take decades because I'm not very academically motivated. I probably will never get another degree in my lifetime. I have 1 degree and that was probably enough for me. But I have had 20 years of work experience since college. And none of that data about myself is quantified in any kind of machine readable way. And so we have our Experience U project, which is focused on helping individuals take their experiences, their lived experiences, whether they were in the workplace, whether they were in community-based organizations, or whether they were in the home or on the job, take those experiences and generate learning and employment records in digital ways for them to be machine readable, machine actionable for employers. What we want to do is enhance that work. So if you get this Experience U LER, that has some value, but it's just really a self-assertion that you're making and signaling to an employer. So to add value to that, we worked on developing what we are calling linked claims, which would allow me to send that LER to an individual, could be my boss, could be a supervisor, could be a peer, and say, hey, my experience says I've got these skills. Can you validate that I have these skills, that I've demonstrated these skills on the job? And that's where linked claims comes in and allows individuals to have that peer-to-peer recognition and valuation and validation of skills. To make that even more impactful and more powerful, we recognize that there is a change management process that has to take place. There is that human process that has to take place. Slow down. Okay, sorry. Trying to get through this all so we can actually have a good panel discussion. But what we want to do is allow for individuals to take this assortment of LERs from Experience U, LERs from linked claims, or any LER you get from an education or learning opportunity, but present them in a resume presentation. And that is where we've come up with the LER resume standard, which is a new standard or schema that will allow individuals to take their various LERs, their various digital credentials or digital badges, and compose them into a resume presentation. So it can be both machine readable, but human readable as well. So how does this all work? I know I just had a lot of mouthful, and I'm sorry that I was talking too fast. Hopefully this will make sense. So this is the workflow for skills savings accounts. Combine that fintech with the skills tech. So you have this digital wallet of skills, of your skills savings account with money in it. But how do you get started? So you can take your experience, generate an LER, and put that LER into your digital wallet. You might have had a number of work-based learning opportunities and trainings that have occurred during your time in the workforce. Those can be then converted into learning and employment records that again can be stored in your digital wallet. Through linked claims, you can take these digital records from your wallet and use the linked claims tool or concept to then share those various credentials, whether it's I have a transcript from a university and I want that university to say, yes, Taylor attended this school from 2002 to 2006. Makes me feel very old to say it that way. Or whether I have military experience, or whether I have previous employment experience, I can take these LERs that have been generated and share them with different people within my ecosystem and ask them to verify or validate skills or experiences that I have through linked claims. Those all get fed back into more LERs that are stored in my digital wallet. I can use all those different LERs in my digital wallet to compose a resume. I can use this resume authoring tool to take my various learning and employment records that I've gained, and then I can put them into an LERS, and then I can apply for a job, and they can be consumed by a human resources system, HRIS system. Now, where do skill savings accounts come in? Where does that come in? I now have all this money in my account that I can then use for upskilling and reskilling opportunities. I can go and explore if I need to get some AI skills, I need to get some writing skills, I need to get computer programming skills, whatever skills I need to develop and curate. I have money now that I can use to identify these learning opportunities. I can then go and explore and take those courses, find those opportunities, and then it goes back into my digital wallet, and I can then again use all the linked claims tools to then have my employers verify that yes, Taylor's upskilling efforts that he undertook actually delivered new skills for him. And so it's this continuous loop and workflow of where you're combining this financial tech or this employer benefit of financing acquisition of skills and that constant need to upskill and reskill, but allowing for that feedback loop to occur so that people know which programs are valuable, which programs are not, and how many people could really benefit from this. And we're really bullish on what skill savings accounts can mean for the ecosystem and what lifelong learning accounts can mean for individuals, especially if you can get it combined with skills technology. We think that combining the LER tech with the FinTech has the real opportunity to help individuals explore new learning and pathway opportunities on the education and training side as well as on the employment side. If you move on from your job and you take your money elsewhere, the employer will hopefully be hiring somebody that has money in their account to come in and replace you, that they can also use that money to upskill and reskill while they're employed. And we think that this can really generate billions of dollars in the ecosystem so that as providers are trying to figure out ways to be competitive in the new kind of skills-based economy, we think that lifelong learning accounts or skill savings accounts are a critical opportunity for them to really create these upskilling and reskilling programs to help people stay relevant in the workforce. But really looking forward to talking with other people during this roundtable about efforts that are taking place abroad, because we recognize in the United States this might be a new concept for us, but it's not a new concept globally. And so we want to take lessons learned from other countries so that we can avoid the same mistakes. We want to share the lessons that we learn as we go on this journey, so that as others look at revamping or creating new programs in their countries, they also don't have to endure any of the pitfalls that we fall into. But really excited for this panel, and thank you. So Simone, I'll turn it over to you.
So I'd like to invite the other panelists up on stage. So Klara, Patrick, and Yasmin, please. So you two right there? Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, great. Thanks for setting the stage, Taylor. So just for the audience, LER, Learning and Employment Records, is more like another acronym, but it does play on the E, the employer records. So if we're talking about lifelong learning, I think we could all agree that a lot of learning happens during, when we're at work. And so I think it's more of an equitable way of thinking about digital credentials. Anyways, by the way, Taylor, yeah, you might only have one diploma, but you have 5 kids. So I see you. All right. I'd like for the panelists here to react and connect to this notion of, let's call them lifelong learning accounts to abstract it out. And I'd like to start with Klara from the European Commission. So Klara, if you would just briefly introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about the individual learning accounts.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here with you. I'm a policy officer at the European Commission in the Directorate General for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion. And previously I was working in the higher education domain for many years, so in a way connected to digital credentials, not even very far away. And I was also working on the Commission, the European initiative on micro-credentials. And from that work, I ended up in a little bit more closer to the employment world, but connecting really both education, employment, and in my current job, I'm responsible for an initiative which was adopted in Europe under the presidency of the French presidency 2 years ago. And at the same time, when the Council recommendation on micro-credentials was adopted, this shows also that these two initiatives belong really closely together. And this initiative is called Individual Learning Accounts. And the rationale behind it is actually almost identical. The problem statement as what we just heard for the skills saving account. We are living in a world when continuous learning, up and reskilling, skills acquisition of adults is not a luxury anymore, but it is a must for everyone, a much wider segment of the society than before. And that is very much based also on economic reasons. And the idea behind the individual learning accounts is that everyone from the working age population would get a regular, preferably yearly, entitlement on a virtual account and use that for up and reskilling following courses from a certain registry. And this is in a way different from the example we just heard, because it is in Europe, it would be a public initiative. It would be led by governments. It would be based on government funding, but not only government funding. It would allow the combination of different funders. But the starting point would be the regular entitlement from the government. We also, so this is very important change of perspective, because it's in skills policies, national skills policies, usually funding was always supply side funding. So for adults, it was the adult learning institutions that got the funding. But now it is demand side funding. It means that the learner would be the beneficiary of the funding. But in actual fact, the learner would not get the funding. It would go to the training institution directly, but the learner would decide on what to learn when, for what reason, independently from the employer. And everybody would get the funding. So it is a universal funding, but it could be differentiated, because those who have specific training needs, and those are not always the low skilled, low qualified, but it could be really anyone in an economic transformation of certain sectors, etc. Anyone could get into the situation that reskilling, upskilling is required. And those who are in this need of more focus on training, they would get a top-up funding. So this is fundamentally different from previous funding models, where funding went to mainly to the lower qualified, as in the form of second chance education, etc. So this is the main difference, and I guess I can.
Thank you very much, Klara. Yeah, this is great. So please just keep it at 5 minutes, just an address, so we know what you're working on, and then we can go into question modes. Patrick, could I ask you to go next?
Thank you. Thank you. I will tell you a short story about France, and then I will get back to you, and I'll save a little bit of time for later for the questions, because there is a lot to say. We had in France, since the something like 2006 or 4, I forgot, we had the individual right to training. It was linked to the employer. You would lose it if you were occupationally mobile. I think it was not for unemployed people. It was definitely not for people out of the labor force, etc., etc. A lot of drawbacks. And about 10 years later, we decided to move to something else that we call CPF, which is good translation for individual learning account. And it became monetized, goes in euros, not in number of hours, which makes the life of the people a little bit easier, but I'm not sure it's a good thing. Not sure it's a good thing, roughly speaking, because of quality. I've seen a lot of providers proposing something at a clearly lower level of quality than before, just to meet the expectation of how much people have on their individual learning account. Roughly, you get 500 euros per year, 800 euros if you are among the most in need people, and you get that for 10 years. So after 10 years, you get roughly 5,000 euros. The average use of the account is 1,500. Over the last 4 or 5 years, the average cost of a training spell is 1,500 euros. The good thing, I think, is, as I said, digitalization or DG, whatever, you understand what I mean. It's good for people like us, okay? And I prepared for you my individual learning account, and I can see immediately that I have 200,000 euros on my account. I just did it just before coming here. But in the village where I live, most people would not be able to know how much they have and how to use it, etc. The last point, and I stop here, I promise, is that you buy your training online on this. You literally buy your training on this. Okay, you go, I want to be a car mechanic, so I go car mechanic. I have thousands of propositions, and I click and I buy. The issue is what comes first when you click. You know, and we are all a little bit worried in France, but the Ministry of Labor is kind of confident with that. But I'm asking the question, to what extent what I get first is just like in Google, you know, or any kind of system, what I get first is where people click the most often, regardless of quality, regardless of whatever. Anyway, I'm happy to respond to questions because there is a long story about this. We have about 1.5 million, 2 million people using it, that have used it. We have 15 million people, 15 million people registered with it, not using it. And it's very difficult to do any kind of planning for the government because you never know who is going to use it. This is virtual money. Are you with me? This is virtual money. You have to set aside money for the people in case they go on training, but you don't know how many are going to go on training. Okay, so it's very difficult in terms of planning and management. So I think for people for countries who want to implement that kind of question they should have in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. This is great. Already sharing some of the findings, like it's counterintuitive. Actually, there's money there that is not spent. So I think you going first can really help inform everyone else's path. Yasmin, what's happening in Australia? What are you seeing?
So I'll give you a very quick history lesson on why we're at where we're at. So in the early 90s, we had a policy of levying all employers to be put into a national training levy. And as a result of that, there was an organisation established that basically administered the distribution of it. And because we have a very short political cycle that's often ideologically driven, depending on whether you're left-leaning politics or right-leaning politics. When it was a left-leaning government that brought in this concept. As a result of all of this money being available for training, we had a plethora of registered training organisations spring up, right? And I should preface, I'm not talking about higher education, I'm just talking about the vocational education sector. So if we now, that policy basically was dropped, and what happened was that there was a transition to an expectation, because government was dishing out money that they'd levied against industry, that government would continue, once the policy stopped, to continue to pay for training. So we've got a cultural situation where employers' expectation is that qualification training is paid for either by the individual or by government, right? And employers will do things they need to do, which is primarily focused on compliance training, or whether it's for a specific industry, their certification, right? So that's the cultural landscape of it. So if I fast forward to now, we've got 4,000 registered training providers in Australia, which when you think that there is only 27 million people, that's a lot of training providers in just the vocational sector. And then we have public training providers. So that's private training providers. And then we have public training providers who are called TAFEs, Technical and Further Education Organisations. And there is, most states are just one delivery arm. And then, because Victoria and Western Australia are always different, love living in a federation. Those two states have, I think Victoria has 19 and I think Western Australia has 5 or 6. So we now have again a Labor government, and what has happened is they have decided the best mechanism for getting funding out is there's a national partnership agreement, which basically is each state and territory contribute to it, and the Commonwealth government provides matching funds. And I'm sorry this is so complex, but imagine living in it. And then each state, because they're all special, they will provide funding for particular courses that they believe meets their state's special needs, and they're called, smart and skilled and, skilling SA or whatever, and they all have different agendas. So imagine being a national organisation trying to actually navigate this. And I suppose one of the critical things that has occurred in the last few years is that the Labor government has instituted this concept of free TAFE. So they have ideologically chosen to support free places for individuals, and it is only at the public TAFE organisations. So the 4,000 private ones, no. The public ones basically get the free TAFE places, and it's the individuals who can apply for those places. There are priority sectors that they are in. So there's 131,000 places in the care sector. There's 48,900 places in digital technologies, 35,000 in construction, and 35,500 in early childhood education and care, and then that's distributed across Australia. And then there's priorities given to an individual applying for those free places if they're from a First Nations, or if they're from say they're a woman seeking to get back into the workforce, etc., etc. So there's some categories of people who get priority for that. Okay, so and the biggest issue with this is, one, it's ideologically driven, partly I think to try and reduce the number of those 4,000 training providers that exist. They're looking to consolidate the number. This is a mechanism to do that. The other really evident thing that you can see out of the system is that quality is not actually a factor. And so of all of those free places, the government will always talk about how many enrolments there are. The thing they don't like to talk about is how many people actually finish. And I can also say that certainly in a number of the sectors that I've just outlined, there is evidence that there are still people who will go and pay to do a course which they could have been eligible to get free, because they know the quality of the free course isn't good enough for them. So I would say whatever you do, if you do not have a way in which you can ensure that training money is spent on quality, wherever there is a volume of money around in anywhere, particularly where there's government money, the reality is you spring up with bad actors who look to basically maximise getting their hands on it. So you have to have some sort of an outcome requirement. Otherwise, you basically, I mean, my analogy is throw the money into the main shopping mall in New South Wales, because you know what, you'll do as much good.
Thank you. Thank you for this first round. I wonder if you might have questions. Think about them. I wanted to reflect on why we had this session initially. And so this goes really back to, the metaphor that we've been using, skills as currency, right? So we've been running with this, and now we have digital wallets where we want to, put these skills. They resides there, right? And then we go through this transformation of skills into real money when you exchange them for jobs, right? So you go skills to money. Now there's an interesting opposite flow where there's money, the euros or dollars being dropped into your wallet, the digital wallet, the same wallet where you have skills. And now that money converts into skills through this notion of individual learning account. So some components of the ecosystem stay the same, like the digital wallets. Imagine if you could have skills as currency and, currency as currency in the same place. And so the wallet or the web portals might become exchanges where you can turn one type of currency into another, okay? Now, I would call out a couple of the difference that I've seen, that I've heard, is that in the skill savings accounts in the US, it is the companies, employers that put money inside people's wallet. In Europe, it is the governments, right, that put money into people's wallet. So different ways of going about solving the same issues. Okay. I wanted to turn back to the panelists and wonder if you have a question for each other, having heard what the others are working on, or any reflection. Patrick, I see you.
Yeah, I want to add a couple of things on this point. In France, the training has to lead to a qualification. The training has to lead to a qualification registered with the catalog attached to the national qualification framework. That's very new. And that's a massive change, because all the providers, they are struggling to have their, whatever they were doing, register with the qualification. Okay, so we're not really talking, well, we're talking about skills, obviously, and competencies, but the main issue is a document. So it is very relevant to this conference we're having here.
What's your personal opinion about that?
I think it's good, because we had so many driving license, so many whatever things that were barely connected to the labor market. Well, don't get me wrong, in some places in France, you need a car to work. Okay, except in Paris, basically, where you can take the metro. So it's not bad, but at least it makes your learning visible. Okay, but I have to tell everybody that I'm a fan of qualification. Unless most of you here, I'm a fan. I like competencies to be visible, and the only cheap, easy, fast way to make competency visible is to give people a qualification, either in the formal system or through RPL. So having said that, I like the idea.
Great. So I see there's a question in the audience. I'm going to run.
While you're walking there, Simone, I just want to clarify one thing. You can walk over there while I'm clarifying. Just the skill savings account concept, while we envision it starting with employers contributing funds, we hope that as we figure out some of the policy levers, that this could include any kind of funding, individual funds, employer funds, government contributions, state contributions. We think that it could be just an all-encompassing account that could ingest money from any kind of source to finance the acquisition of skills for the individual.
And the same in Europe, but just the other way around.
Starting back and starting the other way around.
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome.
In France, the thing is financed with a levy. There is a levy on the payroll, so it's very sustainable, very sustainable. The money is coming every month.
Yeah.
So there is an underlying current of privilege across all of it. So you have to have a digital device. You have to be able to use the digital device, have the money to pay and use the digital device. In the States, you have to have a good enough job that will be willing to put the money in, potentially have your own money to top it up. And then in the European funding, yes, but 500 euros isn't going to pay for anything really meaningful. And then you still have to have enough time to be able to do that, assuming that you're in a position where you can. So where is the social justice element in all of that for the most needy that probably don't have those things, that the people that will probably need a lot more upskilling when we're losing a lot of manufacturing and other things to digitization and so on?
I don't think you necessarily have to have a digital wallet. I think the money could go in your bank account, but you do have to have a bank account somewhere where this money goes. Clearly, the wallet is the future, but not necessarily. But your points are still valid, please.
So, connected to your question, in the European, our council recommendation, and also now during the implementation support we are providing to member states to put this in place, we also highlight that those specific measures that are there for those most in need, the lower skilled or disadvantaged with different intersectional disadvantages or vulnerabilities, they should remain, but the ideal way would be that these people are also prepared to be able to use such individual learning accounts. So it wouldn't mean that those support measures would disappear. And another important aspect I would like to highlight for the European model is that it's primarily not a financial measure. It is called individual learning account, and the financial part is very important. But we also stress that there are three main obstacles to learning, and one is funding, the other is time, and the third one is motivation. And the first two are relatively easy to tackle with policies, but the third one, motivation, is the most difficult. And in order to have that, we think that there is a need for a bundle of other support measures, and we call them an enabling framework, which includes guidance, which includes validation, recognition, and this is why I think we are talking about it here as well, and also a registry of available learning opportunities and information about time paid training leave. So all this together, and as I said, it's not a primarily financial measure.
And we think that's also why we want to include government funding as part of skill savings account. We recognize that if it's siloed off as only employers and employees contributing to these accounts, that does create some equity issues and access issues. So if we can help get the policy levers in place to where the way the federal government in the United States finances higher education and work-based learning opportunities and apprenticeships, if we can find out ways to help get some of those funds into these types of accounts, then that gives greater autonomy to those individuals as they want to go out and seek these opportunities. But we don't envision this being something that has to live in a mobile app. This could live on websites. People could access this through community-based organizations like libraries or community centers to access their accounts and access their funds and explore those opportunities.
Quickly. I don't think I agree that the Matthew effect is not addressed. You know, the people learning all the time, they keep learning all the time. But we are on the way to doing it by giving more people to the people at the bottom of the qualification distribution, by creating proper guidance. I would add a fourth dimension to what Klara was rightly saying, proper guidance. If there is no proper guidance, then providing money is useless.
Thanks, Patrick. I was just about to say that. We are giving, I think it's great, we are giving, we are overcoming the barrier of finance, money for individuals. They know lifelong learning is a reality, and not everybody can have access to that money to improve their work life. It gives individuals money, but also it gives them a power to make decisions onto how and where they're going to go, which is great. However, if we don't, and Australia is a typical example of that, it distorts the market. And if you don't give power to the person or empower them to make those decisions with career guidance, it just distorts the market and the individual doesn't end up any better at all. So I think these systems need to include A, career coaching or guidance, but B, to help the time side of things, we need to be able to use those funds for recognition of prior learning assessment, not just for training. I think that if this whole system included career guidance, RPL, that, yeah, it can work.
Can I just add, I think certainly from the Australian context, I would say even in and it's significant investment that's been made in the free places that are available. One of the reasons why there is really poor completions, it's been done, the money's given to the training providers on the behalf of the individuals, but there's no support mechanisms around it, right? And they're targeting it to lower socioeconomic and vulnerable people, etc. But if this is their first experience of going back into learning, because it is qualification, and also in some states micro-credentials are supported, but if they don't have what I would call the pastoral support about basically being in a learning organisation, to some extent it sets them up to fail. So you can't just have the policy lever of here's money for training. You do need to understand what wraparound services that you need. And the other thing I would say is, and I suppose it goes to the quality point, is you need to empower the individual to know what they should be looking for in terms of what good looks like. Because we all know what we would look for in what is a quality outcome. But if you are not knowledgeable of the sector, and in particular in a sector in Australia where there's, over 4,000 providers, how do you know whether what we've found in the research we've done is people go to the local one that's on their train line, or is it's convenient, or has the timings that's convenient for them, or does it all online because they're going to have to do it in their own time, whatever. But they have no skill to determine, well, does that mean I'm actually going to get something that's going to be worthwhile?
So nobody talks about the UK anymore since Brexit. So I'm here to talk about the UK. So in the UK, we have apprenticeships, and they are funded by a levy on businesses who earn more than £3 million a year. And therefore, that funds smaller organisations to take on apprentices. Now, my son's 17, looking at apprentices. I'm 43, not looking at apprentices. And what I'm concerned about is that we're looking at systems as if there's one size fits all. But actually, what my son needs as a 17-year-old is very different to what I need as a 43-year-old, is very different to what other people need. And I wondered whether maybe big problems need small solutions, if people could talk to that.
I think that's why we came up with this concept, is that we want to give that autonomy to the individual, because we recognize that in different careers, different fields, different spots or journeys, exit points in your life, you may need different types of upskilling or reskilling services. And so that's where, by empowering the individual to have these types of access to funds, they can then identify what the right opportunities are to meet their needs. So whether it's a 2-week boot camp to get some coding skills, or whether it's you've been let go from your employer and you're displaced and you have a little bit more money in your account and you can go get an associate's degree. We wanted to have that flexibility to allow the individuals to identify what's the right learning opportunity for them and their career journey and their pathways. But I agree, there isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all approach. And I also wanted to say too, I don't think anybody should view digital badges or skill savings accounts or lifelong learning accounts as a silver bullet to solve all the ails. These are more just stepping stones and part of the solution to help get us to where we want to be. These are all kind of complementary and building on one another, rather than like a one-size-fits-all solution.
Thank you. Klara, I think, did you wanted to add something to the previous conversation to round up that?
Yes, indeed. So I just mentioned this enabling framework, which is exactly about these topics you mentioned: guidance and counseling, validation, RPL, which is used as a synonym for invalidation, a single digital portal or application which puts together all the different elements from the financial part, showing how much funding is available from which funders, etc. Then also the registry from which people can choose, and the funding can be used for all for validation, for guidance as well, unless they are provided free of charge as part of the system, because it's not enough to have to go back to the general guidance system of the country or the general validation system of the country, but these have to be really integrated elements into this measure, so that the users can really they get this right away when they open their account. And there was one more aspect I wanted to say, and it's also important that whatever happens, if the labor market status or the changes, or the person changes jobs, or just wants to change jobs, the funding is there available for them. So it's not dependent from the employer, and the employer has also no say in this context, or for what kind of training the individual uses the funding. But the employer, and it is the case in France, the employer has the opportunity to ring fence money to certain employees that need this money. So in France, the portal, and that is this CDC, Caisse Dépôt et Consignation, which put in place the portal for individual learning accounts. That has the technical solution to say this employer gives 300 euro extra to that employee, and this is very important. And one very important aspect in Europe, which I don't know how much is there in the US, we very much stressed the importance of a social dialogue on this topic. So when designing the individual learning account system for a country, we insist that ministries, the national authorities, take on board from the very beginning the social partners, employers, trade unions, and also the federations of learning providers, university associations. And it doesn't really matter who provides the training, as long as the training serves the needs of the individual and also what is needed in the economy of that country or region.
Thank you. Serge, I hope yours is more of a statement than a question.
It's two comments.
Okay.
The first one is individual learning account in France is a system that works because it fails. Because if everybody asks the money, there's not enough money to pay everybody. So it works only because some of the people ask for the funding and not everybody asks for the funding. The second thing is motivation. I think when we speak about motivation, we just blame it on the people. We say, oh, you're not motivated, you don't want to learn, so it's your fault. I think that if we think that motivation starts by recognition, is because recognition precedes competence. Recognition precedes the desire to learn. If you are not recognized, why would you learn? Why would you want to develop your competencies? And I think the first problem is not because there is not money, it's because you are not being recognized.
Wonderful. I think this might mean that recognition adds liquidity to skills as currency. Maybe. I don't know. I feel like I can leave you with that thought. Thank you very much to all the panelists. Thank you.